Hey, welcome to Does Buffy Suck? The podcast where we watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer and decide if it's awesome or if it sucks. A big rainstorm just ended and it got all sunny out, so I'm like, I'm gonna go outside and do some stuff. But I hear thunder on the horizon, so I better record this quick. So this is finishing up the Buffy pilot. We recorded these episodes all together in one big batch, so they don't have proper introductions, so here I am introducing you. Let's set the scene. My name's Keith, I'm your host, and I've been a Buffy fan since like 1998 or so. And my co-hosts are Mike, who's also a Buffy fan from back in the day, Julian, who used to watch some of the latter-day episodes of the show when he was younger, but doesn't know any of the early stuff, and Rayanne. Rayanne's our secret weapon because she doesn't know shit. She asked if Seth Green plays Spike. It's delightful. So basically, yeah, it's two old viewers introducing the show to two new viewers. And so far it's going pretty well. So this is the second half of the pilot, Welcome to the Hellmouth Part 2, or as I learned, when you split these episodes up into their individual parts, this one's actually called The Harvest. So look at that, we're learning already. We're already learning things that probably every single person listening to this already knows, but I didn't know that. So yeah, let's discuss the end of Buffy's first harrowing adventure. When we last left our heroes, they were fighting a bunch of vampires. Oh yeah, and we're also going to talk about the unaired pilot, which if you haven't seen that, it's on YouTube. It's a little interesting. Go check that out. And we're going to talk about that too. All right. It's getting very ominous out here. Okay, on with the show.
Hey, can you be quiet?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, my dog.
I know. You felt so bad for a second. I'm sorry to do that too.
So welcome to the Hellmouth, Part 2. So it aired the same night, all the same movies and songs were still popular because it was only an hour that had passed. So I guess they saved Willow at the end of the first half, right? I didn't write that down. Mm-hmm. But I've got that they all gather in the library to try to figure out how to go save Jesse. So I presume that in that fight scene, they saved Willow.
Oh, the first episode ended with that cliffhanger of like the vampire is about to bite Buffy. And then in the second episode, it was really just like, I felt like it was kind of like deflating a balloon. It was like this big, huge, like, oh my God, she's about to die. And it was like, He saw a crucifix and ran away. It was like,
yeah, I didn't even see it. I like looked away for a second and I was like, oh, did she kill him? Julian's like, yeah. And I was like, how? He's like, there was a cross.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was clearly just an ad break that they hit. Like they just picked a part in the episode where this was the end of the first hour, and when this actually aired, it would have been 2 minutes of commercials and then come back to resolve that cliffhanger immediately. Like, I don't think it was meant to be like a long cliffhanger.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, it was meant to be a full 2 hour thing that you watch as a thing.
Still, I still think it's a letdown because even if it was still like the biggest fight of the episode, and then it's over in a second.
Yeah, and my first note for the second half is just that the gang gathers in the library. So I'm like, yeah, I missed something there. Like some shit went down. But this is always what I found. Buffy kind of taught me this about myself, is I'm super interested in dialogue and in character development stuff. And then as soon as a fight scene starts, my brain just glazes over. I'm just like, yeah, let's just get through this. Like, unless it's an incredibly great fight scene, I don't give a fuck.
I'm the same way. I just kind of tune out because I guess like my brain's like, well, you don't really need to know what happens, just who wins.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like there's a couple I can think of. Like there's this one episode of Angel where Angel and Faith have it's insane. It's like a 40-minute fight, and that's amazing. But unless you're going to go out of your way to make it a centerpiece of the episode, then yeah, who fucking gives a shit? It's just, I mean, the fight scenes are pretty good, and it's way more noticeable later that Sarah Michelle Gellar is just a lot curvier in season 1. She lost a lot of weight as the show went on, but her stunt double didn't. Her stunt double is still super buxom all throughout the show. So you'll definitely notice some times where all of a sudden when Buffy does a backflip, she has boobs and then she doesn't. It's kind of funny. But they do a pretty good job with these fight scenes. I just don't give a fuck about fight scenes. It feels like a requirement of an action show on TV. You gotta do it.
Especially at that time, right? Like this was the late 90s. It was a genre show. Like you've got to have fight scenes, and they've got to be of the shitty 90s quality of fight scene where everything looks like a little stilted. It's not high quality. It's what they could afford for that kind of show.
Yeah. And it's also called Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so she should do some slaying from time to
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So we got the gang gathering in the library, and this is just kind of, this establishes the core group. We've got Giles, who he knows all about the ancient tomes and stuff. Willow, especially in these early ones, is all about computers, but she's just sort of becomes more of an all-purpose nerd. Buffy's the Slayer, so she has Slayer powers. And Xander, he's around. He's hanging out.
You know what's funny?
He has a zinger once in a while.
Xander's like the guy that's like everyone kind of hates because he's kind of not that important or whatever. But for some reason, he's the guy that I always connected with. Because I was like, he's just, making jokes because he's insecure and no one really takes him seriously. And he just wants his friends to like him.
That's you.
Like I was even going to say, if we do skip ahead a little bit in this season, the first episode that happens that I think is kind of worth watching is a Xander episode. And that does always, like Xander episodes are always good,
You know what else? He's also a really bad actor. But when I was watching the first episode, I remember I had this, just the other day, I had the thought like, oh, he kind of looks weirdly like a young Bruce Campbell.
Yep.
And then I was like, oh, and he's also the guy who's always making quips and doing one-liners. I was like, I wonder if that was intentional.
It has to be.
I don't know.
Like he's basically channeling Bruce Campbell in Evil Dead, and I guess more specifically like Army of Darkness.
Yeah.
In this character.
Yeah, I never really picked up on that before, but just this time watching it, I was like, oh, maybe. So yeah.
He's definitely a good example too of, if you follow anybody from this show and try to follow their careers, it's usually not worth it, and he's a great example. I watched every stupid thing Nicholas Brendan was ever in, and the only one that was ever good was that movie you told me about, My Continuum or whatever it was called, the time travel movie.
I think Confluence or something. Anyway, it was really cool. Yeah.
We can't remember what it's called, but I watched some fucking bad movies like Beach Blanket and Murder Party and all this terrible shit just because he's in it. So,
Are you saying the episodes of Criminal Minds that he's in are not good?
I guess I got to go watch them now. Thanks a lot, Joanne. Here's my evening.
To fully appreciate them, you have to watch Criminal Minds from the beginning.
Yeah.
Shit, you guys want to do a Criminal Minds podcast?
I bet you there's so many.
We'll call it Criminal Minds, good or great.
Does Criminal Minds suck?
So their good friend Jesse, who they will never forget and they're deeply concerned about, is taken to the Master's hangout. And we learn that the Master is trapped underground because he was attempting to crack open a Hellmouth and bring demons back to Earth, and he failed partway through. So now he's trapped between realms, and that's why he can't leave this little place, is he's stuck down in the Earth. But there's this thing called the Harvest, and if he can accomplish the Harvest, which we're not totally clear what that is yet, then he'll be released onto Sunnydale, and it's going to be all scary. And one thing that's also neat about the different ages of vampires is the young vampires are scared when they hear there's a Slayer, and they run away, because why wouldn't you? But the Master is excited when he hears that there's a Slayer, and that's something that comes up later too, is like, there's some old badass vampires. They're like, fuck it, I killed a few of you motherfuckers. I'll kill another one. Let's go. And I just think that's kind of cool that, these ancient vampires are not scared of the Slayer.
Okay, but Jesse was bit, so why didn't he die?
So there's different varying levels of what a vampire can do to you. They can just bite you and suck your blood and you die. Or they do a thing where they suck some of your blood and give you some of their blood, and it's like a transfusion, and then you become a vampire. And I don't know what point he's at this point, but,
Because a bite is just like, I think you could think of a normal bite as just being bit by anything else. So they just bit him, and he drained his blood, but not enough for him to die.
But was he, at this point, a vampire then?
No, because she talks about like how you have, like what Keith just said. They suck your blood, you suck their blood. It's a whole like
you got to do a 69
pageantry, yeah. And then it's like a whole thing, and then that's how you get to be a vampire. So that doesn't happen to everyone. Most of the time, they just bite people to feed, not to like turn them into a vampire.
Is this like general vampire knowledge that I don't have, or specific to Buffy?
I think Buffy's got, it's pretty much its own kind of spin on vampires. Because like in Twilight, you just have to like sprinkle glitter on people and shit, I think.
Yeah.
Well, again, in the unaired pilot, the lady vampire says, Buffy says it. She's like, he wasn't bit enough. Or Willow, she wasn't bit enough. She's still good. So it was like, What level is it bad?
I mean, I guess just, yeah, it's all we really know is there is some kind of sliding scale.
You don't care enough about the specifics.
Well, you got to assume that the vampires know what they're doing, you know? Like, this is their job. So it's like, I'm not going to tell my mechanic how to fix a car. I'm going to tell these vampires how to do their biting.
I think you just think of it like if I bit your neck and started sucking your blood, eventually you would die. But like at a certain, there'd be a certain point where I bit your neck and suck a little bit of your blood and then walked away. Then you could probably survive.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just a bad day.
Yeah.
All right. I'll accept it.
I think that's how I interpret it, with the exception of the whole turning someone into a vampire, which is like a whole procedure.
Okay.
So here's the line of dialogue I wrote down that is classic 90s, just weird stuff that, was just the way people talked was a little different in the 90s, is Buffy figures out where the entrance to the vampire lair is. It's in some mausoleum or something in the graveyard. And she goes, God, I'm so mentally challenged.
Yikes.
Yeah, that was my one note too, see?
Nice. Yeah, because it's like that combination of, like, especially these early episodes are really heavy on the, like, clever turns of phrase and the weird slang terms, and like they chill out with that a little. So I think this is a combination of that, of that they want to just find a funny, weird, backward way to say something, and that it was totally okay back then to go like, you're retarded.
Well, here's the thing. That's not what they said. And like by them saying I'm so mentally challenged, I think was like the woke of the late 90s. They were like, we didn't drop the R word.
Yeah, it's fully okay.
Yeah, we just said mentally.
I do think that was, yeah, I mean, the real woke thing would be just to not say it at all. Obviously, we know.
Sure.
But maybe at the time they thought they were being like, oh yeah, we don't use that word.
Yeah, totally.
So back at school, Cordelia is in Mean Girl mode, and like all the weird stuff happened at the Bronze with like some weird fight breaking out around Buffy, and like clearly some weird shit's happening. So Cordelia is just spreading weird rumors about like, did you see what all this stuff that happened? Like, I don't think Buffy's cool. Because at this point, Buffy kind of could have gone either way. She could be with the cool girls, or she could be with the nerdy library gang. And this is where it's definitely leaning away from the cool girls, because Cordelia is like, fuck this. But what's neat about this scene is another case of like when you know where things are going later, is Cordelia is telling all this shit to just these two random people. One of them is this surfer dude, and one of them is this other mean girl chick. And the surfer guy is nobody. He's no one. We never see him again. But the girl is Harmony, who, again, so important. Like, just keeps coming back in the show. All the stuff that happens to her is crazy. And it's just so neat to see these random actors that they probably just picked for this dumb pilot that they had no plans for. And just to see who lived and who died, who survived into season 2 and who never showed up again.
Again, Harmony. There's so many people with these names. There's one name. There's one normal name so far out of like 20 people.
Well, which one? Jesse?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and he doesn't even count.
He's gone.
Yeah, they are a little heavy on the... I never really thought of like Cordelia and Willow as being that bad, but I think that's just proof of how bad everyone else's names are.
Yeah, it is.
That those seem sort of acceptable.
Very few people know a Willow or Cordelia.
And then they have a Giles, which is like the most generic ass English name you can possibly think of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's come up yet, but his full name is Rupert Giles. So
British McBritishman, right?
Yeah, his middle name is Tweed. So now that Buffy got over her being mentally challenged and realized where the Master's lair is, she's like, all right, I'm going to go rescue Jesse. And Xander's like, well, I'll come along. And again, it's like, they only have so many sets. They only have so many lead actors. They're just like, yeah, I guess Xander will come along, but there's no fucking reason for this guy to be accompanying the Slayer into the Master's lair.
Yeah.
But he does. And the Master takes his biggest dude and anoints him. He does this anointing thing. I got dogs on my end.
That was so East Coast. Supper's ready!
These fucking dogs, just give it a sec, maybe they'll stop barking.
They really want supper.
Was your dad screaming that at the dogs or at the house?
Who can say? Yeah, I don't know. Whoever's around, whoever's in the mood.
It's like you go upstairs, he's just staring into the corner like the Blair Witch Project.
So the Master does this thing, he anoints this guy. So this vampire now can go kill people, and the Master will gain the power from whoever this dude kills. And then the Master says this very uncool line where he's like, Oh, and when the master gets enough power, that's what the harvest is. This is the harvest. Is they've anointed this guy. He goes and harvests the blood of teens, and if the master gets enough power through that, he can break out of all this shit. And he says, "Tonight I shall walk the earth, and the stars themselves shall hide."
Rad.
And they just take that at face value, like a cool thing to say. Where I feel like later on in this series, like there would have been a beat and everyone would have stared at him awkwardly because he said such a stupid thing.
Yeah.
But at this point in the show, they think that's just a cool thing for a villain to say.
Well, the master, as he's presented here, is like this really weird, almost self-aware character where every once in a while he says something that's like idiosyncratic with what his character is and like very 90s and like kind of quippy, and then he goes back to just brooding movie villain guy.
He also, I meant to mention this earlier, he's got this thing that I think they thought was a cool idea, but it's really not, where he's got this red around his mouth.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be because he's drunk so much blood that he's permanently bloodstained. But I think they even realized how stupid that was because later on in the season, Buffy calls him Punch Mouth. It's like he drank too much punch.
To me, it just looked like the mask was peeling off and his real mouth was showing.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely not a great plan all around. So I guess the gang finds out about this harvest. Jesse, I don't know, my nose sounds who gives a shit. They know the harvest is going to happen, but they don't know where. And Xander, again, because they have so few sets, he's like, well, obviously it'll be at the Bronze, because that's where all the kids are. So they're like, all right, sounds good. And it turns out Xander was right. They do. It does all happen at their other set, the Bronze. This episode's going long, so we'll talk about Buffy's mom later. But Buffy's mom tries to apocalypse block her and is like, don't leave the house and stuff. And Buffy's mom drives me nuts, but we'll have lots of time to talk about her later. So Vampire Jesse is one of the people at the Bronze, and this is where we learn that when you become a vampire, you also become very cool, because suddenly Cordelia is like, oh, you're not as much of a nerd as I thought. You're kind of cool. But Darla and the rest of the vampires, they all show up at the Bronze. They start siphoning blood for the Master. It's a whole big thing. So Buffy shows up. Buffy fights all the vampires while the rest of the gang helps the various teens escape. So I guess they're not totally useless, you know. They do something while Buffy fights everyone. And this is where Jesse dies. He's just giving a big dramatic speech about how the power he feels and how amazing it is to be evil and an evil demon and it's the best. And someone bumps into him, just nudges him. And he was it Xander holding the stake?
Yeah.
And he just gets knocked into the stake and he's dead.
And this isn't even an opportunity for like Xander to have some character development of being like, oh man, I fucking killed my best friend. It's just, oh no, I accidentally bumped into you and now you're dead.
Which is like good for that random comic book writer years later to be like, yeah, man, Xander accidentally murdered his best friend. Like, maybe he would be affected by that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was thinking it would be cool because there's like many apocalypses in this show and they bring it up, but they actually do a good job of it. Like they'll have these like somber moments where they're like, oh, how many times has this been? And Giles will just be like, the 5th, but it feels like a million, you know? Like they're self-aware that every season it's an apocalypse, but they treat it all serious. And one of those times would have been a good time to be like, man, can you believe how crazy these last few years have been? Like, our fucking friend died and we didn't even have time to ever let it sink in or something. They could have brought it up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, we will never speak or see of Jesse again.
Well, I won't give him any time of day then.
Yeah, fuck you, Jesse McNally, rest in peace. So it's weird. It's like, it's a neat idea to have one of the main characters die, but then they did it in a silly way too. So it's like, I just feel like he's throwing a lot of darts at the dartboard here. And it's like, I don't know, whatever. Some of them work, some of them don't.
He was a stupid character anyway. He was always going up and like trying to get with Cordelia. What loser would be trying to do that to the most popular girl in school? That wouldn't happen.
Yeah, he basically was just Xander with fewer funny lines. So yeah.
Oh no, it is true. That's what Screech did to Lisa Turtle. Oh no, that's what TV does.
So then the Master's plan is foiled through Buffy's fighting. She fights the big guy and kills him and whatever. And now Buffy has a gang. And Giles warns us that, oh, you know, we're on Hellmouth. It's not just vampires. Why, it could be anything. It could be mummies or leprechauns or various weeks of television could easily happen under these circumstances.
Please watch our show.
Yeah. Basically like, have you seen X-Files? Imagine that, but for teenagers.
Yeah. So that's the series established. So I guess real quick, we can just talk about the unaired pilot. Just the little half-hour, 25-minute version that they pitched to get the the network to fucking greenlight the show. And I think obviously the most obvious difference is that a different person played Willow.
Yeah, okay. But also, the songs are incredible.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know, right? When they didn't have to pay for the licensing rights and stuff, they could just put in any cool song. Yeah, the songs are way better.
The show starts with Rancid playing. It was awesome. Every song was great. Every single song. There was like 5 songs that whole episode, and every single one was a bop.
Yeah, and there was even a card up at the top, right at the beginning, that's like something about the music in this was not licensed, not for air, not to be aired, or something like
Nice.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if that's one reason, like, they've never officially released this thing, even on that big 7-season box set, and Joss was like, it sucks, I just don't want to put it out. But I mean, that's probably part of the reason too, is like,
For
you're not
sure.
going to pay for all this music just for a DVD bonus feature.
Yeah. So-
Yeah.
And really, the show it should be an hour-long show. It never should have been a half-hour show. And yeah, it was just clearly the budget was so low on that. And like the story, like the plot of the unaired pilot was just that subplot of Willow went off with a vampire, and then they have to save Willow.
Yeah.
Like it was just that, which is like not very compelling.
And I'm pretty sure I read it was like the network that decided to recast Willow. It wasn't Joss's choice, but man, I feel like they did him a solid. Like it is such an upgrade of like, again, like the Allison Hannigan is like,
Yeah.
especially as the show goes on, like she's almost like the emotional core of that show. Like when something happens that makes Willow upset, you know it's bad and you feel bad. Where her name was Riff Regan, who played the original Willow. She just doesn't have it. You
Yeah.
can just feel she doesn't have that kind of gravitas or whatever.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell what type of character she was supposed to be. Like, she didn't have a reaction to anything. Whereas Willow was the only character Allison Hannigan plays, which was perfect. That's exactly who she is in the show.
She also plays the host of Penn and Teller's Fool Us.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Good to know. Is that I assume it's a magic show?
Oh, I'm obsessed with it. That's a whole other story. But yes, it's a magic show where
Okay.
people are trying to fool Penn and Teller with their tricks.
It's perfect. That's ideal.
Yeah.
I love that.
I like how just inadvertently, just through talking, it's like this podcast is like turning people on to a lot of other great shows. Criminal Minds,
Yeah.
you know?
Person of interest.
Bones.
Yeah, I've never heard of Bones.
Yeah, that I don't want any spoilers really, big ones, but I looked up her, Riff Regan.
Oh, yeah,
and
me too.
The article just immediately started to give stuff away, even before it got to the reason why she was recast. So I don't know. So you'll have to tell me because I stopped reading it.
Well, what I read here is just basically I looked her up and I felt kind of bad because on her IMDb it's just known for playing Willow in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And it's like, uh-oh.
I said to Julian, I was like, damn, like she almost had her big break and then nothing else happened.
Like, look at Allison Hannigan was in Buffy for 7 years, How I Met Your Mother for like 10 or 11, and syndication, everything. Like, she's set for the rest of her life, and that could have been that other girl.
Totally.
She didn't suck.
Yeah, oh man, that's heartbreaking. It wouldn't have been though, she sucked.
The nice thing is, though, this was what made me feel better, is I looked into her a little more, and she obviously never made it as an actress. She was in a few little things, but nothing big. But she works as a director of operations for a nonprofit HIV/AIDS organization in Washington, D.C.
Oh.
So arguably, that's way better. Like, she would have wasted her life being a dumb actress. Instead, she's like doing a real thing that helps the world.
Yeah, so it was probably fate that she lost that role, because now she gets to save lives.
Well, it makes me think, like, what have you ever done for the cause of HIV/AIDS, Allison Hannigan? All you did was be a great actress. Like, you could argue Riff Regan did more for us.
And there's probably so few people other than this weird fandom that knows about this person. And so she has such a good fast fact about her when she meets new people. You're like in a group in your improv class and it's like, hey, tell us one thing about you. And she's like, I was Willow whatever on this show.
I wonder, though, if Buffy superfans ever see her and recognize her. I'm sure at least someone has said, like, oh, yeah, you should have been Willow. I wonder if she's ever just like, shut up.
Yeah.
Allison Hannigan
She's like-
fucking rules.
Yeah, she's like, I wasn't. It was the right choice.
Yeah.
I'm curing AIDS.
Well, when we get Allison Hannigan as a guest on the podcast, we can ask her what she thinks of Riff Regan.
Yeah.
Totally.
And we can ask her if Buffy sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just got a few little random ass notes I noticed about the unaired pilot. So Cordelia says that the band playing at the Bronze is called Dingoes Ate My Baby. And they loved that so much that is, in fact, the name of Seth Green's band later when he joins the show.
Oh, right.
And I always, even back in the 90s when everyone was offensive and it was Jackass and WWE Attitude Era and South Park, I always thought Dingoes Ate My Baby is a very weird and inappropriate name for a band because that's a real thing that happens where Australian babies get eaten by wild dogs.
No, it didn't happen. That was the story, that this lady said that a dingo ate her baby, but it wasn't true.
Oh, it's like an urban legend?
No, she said it like to the police or whatever, but it turned out it wasn't true or something.
Oh, that makes me feel better because I thought it was a real phenomenon and they were like making fun of it. And I'm like, why?
I don't think it's a common occurrence. I think we'd hear about it a lot more.
Yeah, my line is very weird where it's like all these super offensive things I don't care about, but Dingoes Ate My Baby. I'm like, I don't care for that band name.
Yeah, very strange.
But I love just seeing these little like seeds that come later that obviously Joss Whedon was like, that is the funniest band name in the world, and I'm definitely reusing that idea. Guess he did.
My favorite part of this episode is when Xander is giving Buffy the introduction to all the cliques, and is like,
that was my next note.
It was very Mean Girls, although Mean Girls is later, but yeah, like...
Yeah, well, it was like exactly like 10 Things I Hate About You, where they go around and they're like the different groups, but then one of them is the Cowboys. It's just these like dudes eating beans out of a can.
With this one, it's just all of a sudden the line is, the Dirty Girls.
And then Buffy asking, why do you call them that? And then she smells them, I guess.
Incredible. They should have kept that.
Yeah, because that is awesome. Because I remember that was like an old joke in the 90s about like Gen X and grunge is like the real grunge people are the ones that haven't taken a shower this week and are all gross. You know, they're not the cool like MTV with the makeup and stuff. Another big thing is that Stephen Tobolowsky was the original principal.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's when I texted Keith. I was like, is that Stephen Tobolowsky, like in this tiny little part in this little pilot?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a little weird that he didn't stay on. And it's weird because he would have been fine. He's obviously a great actor and stuff. But in this particular pilot, I feel like he was like way too jokey. He was...
Oh, yeah.
Like if they stuck with that vibe, that's where the show was like, which way are we going to go with this? Are we going to be Are You Afraid of the Dark? Or are we going to be something else? And he was fully in the silly...
Which isn't his fault. It's in the writing.
Yeah. Like the repeated joke of, he doesn't know Buffy's name or can't remember Buffy's name just does not work.
Yeah. It didn't hit. Yeah, I mean, they definitely made a lot of really good calls coming out of that. Yeah, like we didn't need that, like, this is this clique, and we've seen that like trope a million times, and like we get it.
So Mike, you mentioned this earlier that that one time they showed a vampire die in the pilot, it's just like the worst special effect. It's like, this really slow, like it melting away thing. And so they changed that in the show later to just the dusting. You just poof and you poof into dust. But even that, you'll notice as we watch that they had a budget where they could only show so many on-screen vampire deaths because it's a special effects cost. So there's a lot of, you hear the poof sound and you never see the vampire again.
Well, going back to the Riff Regan being horrible, when the death happened with the vampire, she just went, and then her face went back to normal. Like that was it. It was no reaction at all.
She was just so bland. Well, it's weird because like Alison Hannigan in a way is like a movie nerd, like a TV nerd, where it's like, oh, she's supposed to be the nerdy girl, but I had the hugest crush on her. She's like beautiful. She's not a nerd at all.
That's the point. She is beautiful. It's like, but it's like realistic for all the losers.
But Riff Regan is like just like a very nice, bland person. Like just all of her lines were just like, oh no, of course not, oh, you'll be fine in the new school. And it's just like, God, you're so fucking boring.
Yeah.
Like you're too real. This is a TV show. You know, like come on.
Yeah, like Willow has a personality that comes through almost immediately, and none of that happens for Alison Hannigan's Willow has personality that comes through almost immediately, and Riff Regan's doesn't really do anything.
No. And it wasn't that they didn't write her with enough character. It was just like Alison Hannigan just has that, like, factor.
And can you imagine too, like again, without giving away future stuff, but obviously everybody in this show goes through some shit, some ups and some downs. And the stuff that happens to Willow, if you imagine Riff Regan trying to pull this shit off, it's like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm really going to be invested in the ups and downs of the life of Willow version 1. Like, it's not going to happen. So, yeah, so the network made the right call
Yeah.
with that one for sure. So my very last note is another just cool thing to notice is they're just in the bronze and they're just in a line waiting to get in. And there's just this random little short guy who just says, "Oh, are you the new girl?" And Buffy says yes. And then he just turns away and doesn't say anything else. And it's just a complete throwaway scene. It's just nothing. But that short guy, his name's Jonathan. And of like, you know, I'm like, oh, Darla's important. Harmony's important. This guy, Jonathan, so ludicrously important for where this show goes. And here he is, he's just the guy who's in line at the bronze.
Yeah. And he might not have even been the same character. It might just be the same actor.
Yeah.
But I want to believe he's the same character. Why not?
Because I feel like he's the guy, as his character is in the show later. Like he would go to the bronze because he wants so bad to be accepted and to be cool.
Yeah.
He's never gonna be. but anyway, so yeah, again, that stuff won't mean anything yet. Darla and Harmony and Jonathan, but eventually, keep your eye on these youngsters because they're going places.
Consider it tucked away.
And Rayanne, that's Danny Strong, who you know from Gilmore Girls as what's Paris's boyfriend's name?
Which one? The like Doyle?
Doyle, yeah.
Oh fuck! I forgot he was in that show.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so exciting!
Well, strap in. He's gonna make an appearance for sure. In a big way.
Yay! I love that.
He's like, he gets more and more important, and then like kind of really important, and then you're like, yeah, but I think that's it for him. And then he comes back again, and he's even more important. It's ridiculous, all the stuff he does in this show.
So that character was in these 2 episodes?
Only in the pilot.
The unaired pilot.
Oh, okay.
One line. He was on screen for like 30 seconds.
See, I missed that.
Yeah, you would never, it's a nothing scene. You would never
Damn.
ever notice or ever care unless you knew what he is later.
But I mean, I like am the biggest Gilmore Girls fan in the world, so I'm surprised I didn't like pick up on his face.
He was also a lot younger then.
And that copy of the unaired pilot that's floating around is literally 240p or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's real trash, yeah.
It's the lowest you can get.
Yeah, and I also got to say, I did a little bit of research while we were talking. So the dingoes ate my baby thing, apparently it was that no one believed them and they thought they killed their child. And then when the body was eventually found, it was I guess deemed to have been killed by a dingo.
Oh, the dingo did do it.
Yeah.
See, so I mean, yeah, that's like just such another 90s thing of just like, yeah, that's his funny name for his edgy band. But it's not funny. It's fucking gross and
It's
weird.
horrifying,
It's about
yeah.
a dead baby. And I guess too, Dingoes Ate My Baby. I mean, it is the kind of name that a bunch of 17-year-olds would name their band. So
For
yeah,
sure.
I guess it's
My high school boyfriend's band was called I Have a Dollar. No reason. It's just someone said it.
Well, yeah, we made it. So should we just keep rambling for another hour? Are we good? Like, let's make that. I can't believe how long that was, but I do. I guess it's because, yeah, it's like a double episode. We're fucking setting up all the setup of this stuff and just talking about our history with the show.
Yeah.
I really suspect our future episodes will be way smaller than this, but
Yeah.
who knows? We have such fun. We have such fun hanging out.
This was 2 episodes plus a half hour something plus, yeah, the setup and our background. So there was a lot.
So how are you feeling, everybody? Does Buffy suck?
No.
I'm going to say, does Buffy suck? Not yet. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, it's not yet, I think is accurate. I think Keith's already alluded to there's some real trash coming up.
Yeah, I'd say at this point, there's definitely things that suck, but overall, not bad. Pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I guess I can do, so obviously you can find this podcast wherever fine podcasts are available. I'm going to toss it on YouTube and shit too. So, but if you have, that's what I could say. If you got thoughts, if you got comments, if you have opinions about this or any of these upcoming episodes, season 1 of Buffy in general, it's Buffy Podcast on Instagram.
Yeah.
Just go drop a comment in there.
Keith's random novel friends who might be listening to this to see another side of him, or my 2 friends who think this might be something worth listening to and won't listen again after this episode, drop us a note.
Yeah. All right, so now I guess we got to come up with a classic sign-off.
Well, we don't know if Buffy sucks yet.
My boyfriend, ladies and gentlemen.
I like it. I'll go with the awkward ending anytime.
the dirty girls.
Why do you call them... Oh, wow.
They have views on hygiene. It's pretty intense.